On my orders, coalition forces have begun striking selected targets of military importance to undermine Saddam Hussein's ability to wage war.
And with that announcement, the United States was in its second war in less than 2 years. They called it Operation Iraqi Freedom. It started with a 3-day airstrike campaign in late March 2003, intended to cripple the government of Iraq. It would set the stage for one of the largest and most controversial invasions in the modern era. Early 2003 was a worrisome time for the US. Memories of the 9/11 attacks were still fresh, the space shuttle Columbia had just disintegrated, and the Beltway sniper attacks had occurred just months earlier.
September 11th altered the political landscape. That did not alter many of us in government the conviction that we were set on a disastrous path.
It was still a fraught moment, and it was a time when a lot of people had reservations, but the overall center of gravity was in the direction that the Bush administration ultimately went. And we know now, of course, that part of the argument was based on a flawed premise.
That premise was that Saddam had weapons of mass destruction, a violation of United Nations requirements. Less than 2 months before the invasion, then Secretary of State Colin Powell made the case to the UN that Saddam was hiding something.
Everything we have seen and heard indicates that instead of cooperating actively with the inspectors to ensure the success of their mission, Saddam Hussein and his regime are busy doing all they possibly can to ensure that inspectors succeed in finding absolutely nothing.
Most people knew that he did not have nuclear weapons and would take a number of years to get them, even if he wanted them. But most of us, including myself certainly, felt that he must have chemical and biological weapons because he had them before.
What followed the invasion was a massive internal conflict that would leave Iraq in ruin.
All that central authority that had gathered up in Baghdad all of a sudden was melted down. And that open space became a jurisdiction of weak central authority, which allowed Iraq, which for so long had been kind of tightly guarded, to be punctuated by all these forces.
Ambassador Barbara Leaf led one of the reconstruction teams in Iraq in 2010 and saw the violence and corruption that followed the invasion firsthand.
We opened the door to just a huge amount of instability and human wreckage. And that's something I, as an American will always regret.
But she also notes the U.S. is not solely to blame for Iraq's current problems, and that the U.S. should stay engaged with Iraqi leaders.
At this point, Iraqis have full agency. So we are long past the point where Iraqis can essentially let themselves off the hook for decisions that their own political leaders are taking, bad decisions as well as good ones.
Saddam would be captured by the end of 2003, but the war didn't end there. The occupation continued until 2011, leading to the deaths of hundreds of thousands of Iraqis and nearly 5,000 coalition troops. No weapons of mass destruction were ever found. Iraq would prove to be a scar on the Bush administration's legacy, with effects still being felt today.